Oh man, Aaron, I like that. All
Mhm.
right, all right, all right, cool. So I'm gonna ask you the same at the end. Let's see if your opinions change as we go through. Hopefully they'll all stay at 10 or go up. All right. So what we're gonna talk about today is how do we make our website into a lead generation machine. I'll call this also powerful marketing strategies for startups in 2021. But we're really gonna talk about, hey, what can we do so that we can take our website and help us sell more of what we're trying to sell. And we're going to talk about strategies and plays. Just first of all, a reminder with Elevate Ventures, we have a partnership. We call it Hubs for Startups, which makes sessions like this possible. There's also access to HubSpot. HubSpot is a software platform for marketing and sales. And you get discounts, right? You get 90% discount on HubSpot. We call it scholarships if you're interested. So just check out hubspot.com/startups. And my name is Jose. I work at the startup team. I've been at HubSpot for 5 years. I'm a former entrepreneur. I'm passionate about startups, and I'm passionate about growth and sales and marketing. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. What we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the old versus the new playbook of connecting with customers, right? For the last 10 years or so, and more increasingly the last 5 years, the buyers have become more in control of the whole buying selling process. This is for B2B and B2C, but especially for B2B is where we've seen the biggest change in this. Who has control, who has the information, control of the information for these transactions. It used to be back in the day, the seller had all the information and that gave the seller the power in that interaction. Today, most of the information is public and it's easily accessible. So now the power of information lies on the buyer. So that changes the dynamic. And because of that change, we're going to talk about how do we change our strategy of connecting with this customer based on that new reality, and then what are some of the specific tactics we can implement to execute on that strategy. So first of all, the old playbook, you've probably heard this before. I mean, this is not something new. We've been speaking about this at HubSpot for the last 15 years. That's a long time, right? The old playbook is, hey, I need attention. I need to get customers. Let me get in their face. Let me get in front of them. That still happens today, right? Like we still see ads out there. There's still ads on Hulu, right, or anywhere else. If you watch Thursday Night Football, you're gonna see ads. So there's still companies doing a ton of work that is old-fashioned, that is getting in front of people's faces. That playbook is broken unless you have a ton of money, unless you're like Budweiser or Coca-Cola. It really isn't a very effective playbook to get in front of customers. So people are going to block ads, they're going to block emails, they're going to send you to spam, and they're not going to pick up the phone. So trying to get in front of people is not effective, right? That whole playbook where you're trying to get people in attention by getting in front and interrupting them doesn't work. Hasn't worked for a good part of a decade now. So how do we do it? Is, well, first we need to recognize that the buyers are in control, right? Buyers know and have access to information. They actually do a ton of research before they even engage with the business. Right? They do like 80% of their research before they want to connect with someone in sales. And that is a good thing. That is actually an opportunity for businesses to capitalize on. So how do we, and also the other thing is the experiences that have been very good for years on the B2C consumer segments that people have got used to. Now B2B buyers are also expecting the same kind of delightful experiences from all types of purchases, be it professional, be it business to business, or even like buying a toothbrush, right? Like everyone wants a delightful experience when they're trying to interact with suppliers. So how do we take all that into account to create a better playbook to connecting with them? So the playbook that we've been talking about for years now here at HubSpot is the playbook of inbound marketing. So the playbook is, instead of getting in front of people, like think you're in a bar and you're a single person and you're in a bar and you're trying to connect with someone, right? The old-fashioned way would be you would just get in front of someone's face and start talking with them and see, go one after the other until one person responded to you. Not very nice. right? The modern way is you find a way to make yourself very attractive so actually people come to you. And that's the same concept of inbound marketing. That's the same concept of trying to connect with customers if you're a business, is you're trying to make yourself very attractive and you're trying to have meaningful interaction. So the way we do this in the digital world is through content, is through understanding what our people are looking for and putting that, out there so that they can find it. And so we're going to talk about what those things are later on. Now, before we make ourselves attractive to our buyers, the main fundamental principle of effective marketing is we need to define who is it that we're trying to attract. We need to do a great job at understanding the specific type of people that we want to engage with us. And we can't, if we're making ourselves attractive, we're not interrupting, but we're attracting people. It is a little harder. So you need to be very specific to be effective. You can't be attractive to every single person out there. So you have to be attractive for a very specific type of person. So you need to define who that person is. So how do you do that is we call that a buyer persona. Now, many of you have probably done this exercise already where you define your persona. Always a good exercise to review it. Now, I'm adding to the slide deck that link. That is a tool to help you develop or polish your existing persona so you have something more robust and you end up with something like this. So you want to add to your persona not only like the demographic information, like I said, I sell to females between 25 and 35 years old that live in the Southeast and that have a college degree and they make over 50K in income. That's demographic. We want to go a little deeper into their day-to-day lives and their experiences, their roles, how they buy tools, how they choose tools, or how they choose products like the ones we sell. So you want an in-depth psychographic element to your buyer persona because this is what's going to help you connect with them. Now, how do we decide which persona? Especially if you're starting out, one of the problems of developing a buyer persona is you need to make a conscious decision to not pursue a certain type of person. And that is not an easy decision to make. Like when you have a business and you're trying to get started, you want a customer, right? And so if from the get-go, you're saying, well, like I want a customer, but I'm not going to sell to these people. You're reducing the amount, the number of people you can get. And so that is a hard choice. When at HubSpot, when we started, we said, we're going to focus on mid-market companies, marketing directors only, and we're not going to focus on corporate and enterprise level companies. That was a big decision. That was a hard decision, but it was a useful decision because it allowed us to develop the focus we needed to connect better with that segment. So buyer persona, very important. How do you select your buyer persona? How do you make these decisions, this gives and gets, these choices of who not to pursue and who yes to pursue? And the first thing is, well, you define who would be the most ideal person for your business, who would be the most profitable, who would get the most value from using what you have, who would stay with you the longest. And so that's why we chose mid-market managers, directors of marketing when we started at HubSpot, right? We didn't choose Fortune 500 because we knew that they could benefit from us, but they couldn't benefit as much as the mid-market companies that we were targeting. So that's a way to define which to pursue and which not to pursue. Now, question for you in the chat, response A, B, C, or D. How do you feel about your current buyer persona? Do you think you have a really well-defined persona, A, or B, or C, or D, like something a little bit less perfect? A, B, C, or D? Get Aaron, I love it. All right. So I'm gonna guess you have a persona. You may not have a very robust persona, but you're on your way to get there. And some of you actually are very comfortable with a well-defined persona that you have. That's great. Now, what do you do after you have a great persona? And if you're at a B, that's a good starting point. And you can go back to that tool and kind of see if you can refine it, do customer interviews, and kind of do some sales and start gauging which are proving to have a better product market fit. The next thing you need to do is, besides understanding your persona, you need to understand their journey. Now, question for you in the chat: who has heard about the buyer's journey? Yes or no, heard about the buyer's journey?
Yeah.
There you go. Cool. Brilliant. Right. Maybe, right? That's a great answer. I hadn't heard about buyer's journey before I joined HubSpot because I wasn't in marketing. I was more on sales. So, sorry, this went back. So yeah, buyer's journey, if you've heard of this, is all the stages a person goes through from before they purchase something. And the concept is, before someone decides on a product to buy or a supplier to engage with or to partner with, they go through a series of decisions and understanding and research that gets them to that point. And so linearly, where it all starts is what we call the awareness stage, which is, this is when your persona is trying to understand better the problem they're trying to solve. Like they don't really understand that they need more information to give it better shape so that they can now understand how to address it. So first is awareness stage. How do I better understand the problem that I'm experiencing? And so for an example, I like to use the example of like a parent. If you have a parent and you have a kid, and let's say your kid is 10 years old, and the kid starts making poor choices, right? Hanging with the wrong crowd. And you're starting to get worried, but you don't really know what's going on. Is it the age? Is it normal when you're 10 years old? Is it the neighborhood I'm in? Is it my involvement in their day-to-day? What's going on with my kids, right? I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to develop an awareness of problems. The next thing is, once I have a good awareness of a problem, I need to understand, well, what are some potential solutions for this, right? Do I need to, involve them in extracurricular activities? Do I need to enroll them in sports? Do I need to just ground them? Do I need to get them a therapist? Is this just a normal thing in their development that is very normal? I should just let them be. There are several alternatives for me to pursue a solution for this problem. That's what we call the consideration stage. And so your buyers are trying to understand what are paths to solving that problem. Once they have that understanding, they'll probably choose a path. And you can help this, right? You can help argue for a particular path, like enroll them in a sport. That's the best path for you. Once you choose that path, then you start researching, well, which of the specific supplier solutions or vendors for that path am I going to choose? So if I choose sports, and let's say I choose enroll my daughter in a soccer academy, which of the soccer academies out there would I enroll her in? And so I start comparing the ones that are only on weekends, the ones that are every day in the afternoon, the ones that play tournaments, the ones that are played indoors, outdoors, expensive, cheap. So now I'm starting to compare potential vendors. That's the decision stage. Why is this important? Because when we're trying to connect, generate leads, generate sales for our business through marketing, we can't do a cookie cutter solution for everyone. Like, we can't connect with people in the awareness stage, telling them about how we are the better soccer academy in town. It makes no sense. That's irrelevant for me right now. I'm in the awareness stage. I'm trying to understand how is the normal behavior, or what influences bad behavior, undesired behavior in 10-year-old kids. So knowing that your soccer academy is the better than the other one, for me, is irrelevant at this point. So I need to develop content that is relevant to different, for my buyer persona at different stages of their buyer's journey. That's how I'm going to be more effective with connecting with content. I had a great question. I'm being asked if someone is trying to get into the room. I don't know what I would see. Let's see here. Whoa. Yeah, I should probably not restart my computer. I'm not seeing anyone. Cool. So I'm going to keep going. So again, going back to buyer persona, buyer's journey, we need to take these two things into consideration as we're developing our strategy to connecting with our potential buyers and turning them into customers. So once we have this understanding, we go into the strategy. Now, what are the marketing strategies that we should be thinking about? And there are basically three marketing strategies that we should be thinking about. We can do the three of them, or we can choose to focus on one or two of them. The strategies are, one is attracting strategies. This is, I want to get found by more people. I want more people to get in front of my content so that they navigate to my website and learn more about what I do or try to engage with my sales. And so the first thing is getting found, attracting people. And when we say attracting people in general, we're referring to attracting people to my website. And so you can develop strategies to attract more people. The other strategy or group of strategies are with engaging, right? Once I get people to come to me, how do I interact with them, right? It said, if you're on my website, I'm going to give you a phone call. When you're on my website, I'm going to have a pop-up message or a chat, or I'm going to give you more information. How am I going to try to interact with you once you find me? And so these are the engaging strategies. The third one is, through that attracting and engaging, what can I do to ensure a more delightful experience in that interaction, right? And you've noticed this, right? That with some brands, when you go into their website, the information seems more helpful. It seems like they care. It seems more personalized. Some other companies you interact with and you feel like just one more in thousands, right? Like it's not personalized. You feel like a number. That's the delighting part of the marketing strategies. Now, where you choose to invest most of your time is up to you. It's up to where you are now. Mostly, especially if you're starting out, you invest a ton principally on the first two, on the attracting and engaging, where you're trying to get found and you're trying to engage with people who find you. So what are some tools that you use for this? So if you're trying to attract people, well, you're going to use your ads, of course, your search ads or social media ads. We're going to use content via blogging. You're going to use content also like distributing it through social media. You're trying to do better SEO. You're trying to put elements out there that are going to pull people into your business. Now, ads are tricky, right? Because it could be interrupting. So how you execute on ads, it's going to say a lot about who you are as a brand. So we're going to talk about that a tiny bit as well today. Now, that's attracting people. Oh, here, there's one person trying to come in. The next set of tools tools that you can use for engaging is, email marketing, bots, chatbots, marketing, email automation. There's a ton of these tools that you can use to interact with people once they're on your website. Now, for the light tools, we're not going to go into the light today. We're going to focus on attract and engage. But for the light is when you're trying to basically personalize. You're trying to be as personalized as possible, and you're trying to be as timely as possible. So it's not only about personalizing, it's personalizing at the right time. Like if you get an email from me, are you getting that email at the right time? Like, am I getting an email right after I abandoned cart on your website? And am I getting it a day later? Or am I just getting a random email because it's a week to go to Mother's Day? That could be the difference between having a delightful experience or a non-delightful experience with your customers. So these are the tools that you will use. Now, question for you in the chat. If you're thinking about these kind of three big elements of strategy for marketing, what do you see yourself mostly in investing? Is it in the attracting? Is it in the engaging? Or is it in the delighting? Knowing that we probably do a little bit of the three, but which is the one that you're investing more of your focus today? Is it attract, engage, or is it delight? Got it. So So most of you as well, like I first need to be found, right? Not a ton of people know about me, and that is, that's reasonable. Now, one thing that I want you to pay a ton of attention today is when we're talking about engage. Um, it is important that although you're focusing mostly on getting found, one mistake to avoid is I'm doing all these things, all this effort to get more people to my website. Let's say we're measuring how much traffic am I getting this week versus last week, or this month versus last month, and I want to see that going up very rapidly, and that's great. Just having numbers of visitors without knowing who those people are eventually becomes useless. So one of the things that are going to be very interesting today to review is, once you get someone to your website, what are some really easy things you can start doing so that you can start capturing data and engaging with those visitors so that you can generate leads that you can then transform into customers for your business, right? Either by calling them directly with your sales team or by nurturing with email campaigns. So we're going to talk about that today. Cool. I had a question here before saying comparison of two websites. Because of the length of the content we have today, I probably need to skip over that. But check the following. Check HubSpot's website. And I want any website that you review, I want you to think of this. If you think that they've done a good job with persona, here's how I see a website, and I evaluate if I think they're doing a good job or a bad job. A bad job website is when there's nothing for me to do unless I'm ready to buy. Like most websites have something for you to do if you're in the decision stage, if you're ready to buy. They either have a contact sales team, book time, or do a transaction here, like here's where you buy, click here. So most websites, if they're doing a decent job, they have something for you to do if you're at the decision stage. You're in a purchasing motion. What most websites miss, and that is a mistake, is they don't have anything for you to do if you're in the consideration stage or in the awareness stage. And it turns out there's several studies out there, but it's over 90% of your visitors are not in the decision stage. What that means is your website is ready to be valuable for 10% of your visitors. There's nothing relevant for 90% of your visitors. So when you're checking websites and the quality of what they're doing, check B2B websites, like companies that sell software, and see how they have something for you to do if you're in the awareness stage, if you're in the consideration stage, or if you're in the decision stage. So that's what a good website looks like for me. Rick entered the waiting room. So I'm going to keep admitting, Tanji, if you find I admit someone that shouldn't be here, let me know. All right, so let's keep going. So now that we're talking about the strategy of attracting, engaging, or delighting, and we're going to focus on attract and engage, what are some tactics we can execute for this? So we're going to separate this by attracting and engaging, and we're going to start with attracting. So we're going to talk today about three things for attracting. One is SEO, right? And content. How do we get people to, blogging and good content out there to get found when people do a search? And we're going to talk about social media, including ads. We're going to talk about how do we also get found by people who see what we're doing on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. So these are the two main sources of traffic for a business, is either search or social. And this could be, free, or it could be paid. Then we're going to move to the engaging. What are some of the tools that we can use once someone's on our website to create an interaction from which we can, after adding value, extract value, and most times that value is in the form of having their email, so we can keep nurturing that relationship. So first, understanding SEO. Now, there's a whole session on SEO that we could do. There's a full 1 hour session on SEO to go deep into how it works and why it works the way it works today, especially after the Hummingbird update on Google in 2013. But there are a few major elements that are going to get you going in the right direction if you haven't already. First is to understand when you're thinking of SEO, there are two aspects of SEO. One is technical, and the other one is more strategy. The technical is the on-page SEO. That is, how do you make sure that you're doing the right things technically so that it's easy for Google to understand what you're about. So you're basically saying if Google was a library, you want to make sure that it's clear for search engines, right? But mostly it's Google. You want to make sure that when someone searches for inbound marketing, they know, okay, HubSpot is about inbound marketing. So show HubSpot stuff to people searching about inbound marketing. So if there was an inbound marketing or a digital marketing section in the bookstore, all my books will be there. So that's relevance. That's I'm in the right place in the bookstore. Now, what is off-page SEO? Off-page SEO is how do I not only signal to Google what I write about, what I'm an expert in, what is my content about, but also what's the degree of authority I have on inbound marketing. So using the authority that I have on a certain subject. So if we're talking about inbound marketing, if you search about inbound marketing, the most likely thing you're going to find is a ton of content by HubSpot, especially on the organic results, or by HubSpot partners. That's because we've received a ton of credibility on that topic. If you go and this looks kind of like if you were to go to Barnes and Noble and you go into the store, you don't go to the travel section and try to find the travel book. There's a shelf in the middle of the store when they highlight the James Patterson book, the Harry Potter books, the Dan Brown book. Now, those could be in fiction, but they're not in fiction. They're actually pulled up to a very prominent space that everybody can see. And you can think of that as like the first three results of the Google search. So how Google decides which of all the thousands, millions of fiction books to highlight in their store, which of the millions of articles about X to highlight in the first page of results in Google, how do they do that? And what they do is they try to find who seems to be the utmost expert at that topic. And how they do that is they want to see how many people are referring to that piece of content that was created. And that's called inbound links. So we're going to talk about that in a little second. So when we're talking about on-page SEO, that's doing the right thing so Google understands what we are writing about, what we're an expert in. It used to be that we would write about keywords. We would target keywords. We would search for a keyword. We would see how much traffic, monthly traffic that keyword has, and we would do everything possible to rank high for that keyword. That was a good thing to do 7, 8 years ago, before Hummingbird. What happened was Google, after Hummingbird in 2013, and then all the updates after it, what Google was trying to do is they didn't want to give you results based on the literal search. What Google was trying to understand to improve the results, to make your experience better as someone searching is, they're trying to understand what you mean by the search. Not what the search is, but what you mean by the search. So to give you an example, if I search for weather, right? That's a very literal thing to search. Right? You search for weather in Google. Google understands that I'm not looking for the definition of weather. Like maybe some people are, but the majority of people, when they search for weather, they don't mean the word weather. They don't want a definition for weather. What they want to know is what's the weather outside where they are right now. So what Google is, it interprets what you mean by what you're searching. And it also uses all the contextual information like past searches, your history of search, where you're located, like are you in Boston or are you in Florida or are you in San Francisco? And so if I search for weather, what I'm going to get is the sun is going to say sunny, it's 60 in Boston right now. If you do that, you might get it's 70, it's cloudy in Tallahassee right now, right? It changes based on the context of your search. And so because of this, keywords have become very irrelevant. So what you need to rank for is not keywords, is topics. Because the advantage of topics over keywords is a topic covers thousands of variations of keywords. The other thing that Google has done is it allowed for voice search. So now you need to accommodate for multiple ways of asking the same question. And so because of this, Google has to be better at processing natural language. What that means is thousands of different ways of asking about the weather outside, you're going to get the same search engine result. You're going to get sunny, 60 in Boston right now. So because of that, what Google does for other topics are a little more complex, like digital marketing, like inbound marketing, like entrepreneurship, is it actually interprets the topic and then looks for who's the authority for that topic. And so that changes the way we write. Instead of writing thousands of articles for every single variation of a keyword, what we do is we write for topics. How we write for topics is a strategy developed by our head of SEO here at HubSpot called the topic cluster strategy. What you do is you write a piece of content that is a more extensive piece of content called a pillar content that covers more extensively about, let's say, inbound marketing or about entrepreneurship. And then you create a series of niche articles that are related to that main topic. So if we're doing the example of, let's say the startup team at HubSpot wants to rank for the topic of entrepreneurship, we will create a very extensive pillar page on entrepreneurship, all kinds of entrepreneurship, data about entrepreneurship, strategies for entrepreneurship, how to evaluate ideas, how to raise funds, very extensive piece of content on entrepreneurship. And then we will write blog posts for niche topics or subtopics in the area of entrepreneurship, like types of proprietorship, right? So proprietorship, small business ideas, how do you get equity financing? What is a business incubator? How to start a business? What is a silent partner? How to find your partner? How to build a team? These are niche articles, and I structure them around that pillar content. And what I'm trying to do with that is I'm trying to say, hey, Google, of the millions of ways people can search about entrepreneurship, I'm the authority on that topic. And what happens is you're going to rank higher on Google search without having to write 1,000 of articles based on keywords. So first thing is then when you're writing to optimize for on-page SEO is you write thinking about topic clusters, pillar content, and then the cluster articles. The next thing you need to do for good SEO is you need to do the off-page SEO. You also need to find a way to signal to Google, hey, I'm not only good at writing about entrepreneurship, is what I say is very well respected in the industry. So how do I do that? Like, question for you guys in the chat. How would you signal that you're the expert on a topic? So you can talk about your experience now. Most of the time, when you know, yeah, right? Like when someone says you're an expert, not when you say you're an expert, but when someone else says you're an expert, that gives you more credibility. And so if a ton of people start saying you're an expert, that starts to signal you're an expert. If someone who's an expert themselves then says you're an expert, that's even better. Like if I wrote a book about inbound marketing and then Brian Halligan, CEO of HubSpot, said, Jose Martins knows a ton about inbound marketing, then I'd get a ton of authority on that topic. If I wrote about startups and Paul Graham said, hey, Jose Martins knows a lot about startups, that would give me a ton of credibility, right? Because someone who knows, who's an expert in the area, is saying, I'm good at it. Now, how does that happen in the world of content and SEO? Is that's what we call inbound linking. Is when, let's say, HubSpot has an article about entrepreneurship, and we reference the article written by Tunji. And now Google is saying, wait, HubSpot wrote about entrepreneurship, but they referenced Tunji. And then someone else wrote about entrepreneurship, and they also referenced Tunji. And so Google starts thinking, well, like Tunji is probably an authority on entrepreneurship. So why am I saying this? Biggest mistake companies, startups make, but all companies, but especially startups make, is they think the content and SEO game is about writing a ton of content. And it really isn't. This is how the effort looks for a startup when they begin with their SEO. Not a ton of effort is spent on backlinking or inbound link building. Most people don't even know what it is, but they know I'm just going to write 3 pieces of blog articles every week or 3 a day. I'm going to write a ton of really good content. That's not enough, right? What you need to do is you need to actually change the way you approach SEO. What you need to do is you actually need to spend more time finding people to reference your content, people with already built authority to reference your content, so that any piece of content you write has a ton of authority. You're not going to write authority yourself. You're not going to be perceived as an expert by saying, I'm an expert. You're going to become an expert by someone else saying you're an expert. So that's inbound linking. So one of the biggest tips that I give in this session today is, if you're going to play the game of SEO, spend more time than you are today on link building, even if it's at the expense of writing less content. Now, that's SEO. Big part of SEO, of course, is blogging. So the other thing I would say for attracting is you have to start blogging. If you're not blogging now, you need to start blogging now. I know it's a hard decision, right? As a startup, you have a ton of things to do, and spending time creating blog content seems almost like irrelevant, right? Oh, I have a 3-month runway. He'll say, like, I'm not going to be writing content, right? I don't have time for it. Why should I write content? Now, I'll tell you why. Now, this doesn't mean the only way you're going to attract people is through content and a blog. You still need to do ads, especially early on. You need to find a way to hack the way you're getting people to find about you, right? And you need to call people, you need to ask for referrals, you need to work hard, but you need to start blogging. You can't leave it for later. So why would you spend time blogging? So there's a few reasons. One is it's way less expensive than paid search advertising. Now, in the beginning, you'll need to do advertising. You need to give as much heat as you can for your content to get it out there, but it is more expensive to do paid. So content marketing is way less expensive. It also has a bigger reach. The TAM of content marketing is about 3 times as large as the TAM of ads. And if you don't believe me, just think of when you're doing a Google search. How many times do you click on the first organic result versus on the link that says ad? Like, I would bet you 9 out of 10 times you click on the link, the first link that doesn't have the word ad next to it, right? So it's a much larger TAM for organic content. It helps close deals. Like, most buyers today, unless you have a very transactional e-commerce site when you're selling low-cost items, most other items, people are researching about them before they buy, right? I gave my wife an aromatherapy thing for her birthday a month ago, and I did a ton of research on those devices and the smells and everything. So I read content before I made my purchase. It's estimated that half of buyers research 3 to 5 pieces of content before they make a decision. So it would be ideal if they're reading the content that you put out, because that creates a relationship from the get-go. It has a long-term value, right? Because traffic from organic content is more stable, right? You can almost count with those 15, 20 visitors every month created from that piece of content. It doesn't go up and down. And also, you're not paying for it, right? You don't have to find the budget to buy that keyword for the ad every month. Once you're positioned, you're going to get that traffic organically without any further cost down the line. So as I mentioned before, it just drives a lot of more traffic. So in summary, you need to start paying attention to blogging and getting people to get to you through SEO. Now, I have a few questions here. Before I continue, let me read them real quick. So Joshua, great question. there's a ton of content on the web on backlinking strategy or inbound linking strategy. My suggestion is Google search. SEO Moz has good content on it. HubSpot has good content on it. It's almost like sales. Like you reach out to people, you reach out to sites that you know have Google authority. And how do you know this? Is you search for those terms, and they're the people who always show up. Like if you're writing about digital marketing or email marketing, you always see like HubSpot and maybe MailChimp out there. So you probably want to refer from them. And so you find out who the authority domains are out there, and then you reach out to them and ask for a backlink. Now, how do you ask for it? You may say, I want to write a blog post on your blog. I just need a backlink. So you do some sort of like give and get. You add value to them, and then you ask for something in return. So you won't get it for free. You need to find a way to get there. One thing we did for my wife's business, which is family photography, is we found a blog in Canada that had a ton of traffic. We offered to write a blog post for them because they were looking for content. So we gave them a blog post, but they generated a link back to our site, and that generated a ton of SEO for us. But again, Google search it, link building strategies. There's a ton of good content out there for good practices. Cool. So Aaron had also some answers there. Cool. Then how do you use social media? So I'm not going to invest a ton of time here, but real quick, social media, you have to take it seriously. And what I mean by that is, it's not as easy as saying, I'm going to have a Twitter account, I'm going to have a LinkedIn account. And I learned this actually pretty recently at HubSpot when the startups program is quite new at HubSpot. And by new, I mean like 4 years. And we've never really invested the time in developing our social media. And I said like, well, we should. And the marketing team says, like, great, which channel should we do? And I'm like, what? Well, all of them. They're like, you can't, like, we don't have the bandwidth. We're a team of several people, and we don't have the bandwidth to handle more than one channel. So my point with this is, and we decided on Twitter, by the way, and it's proven difficult to maintain the rhythm and effort you need to grow it, even with a team of several people. So what I mean by this is try to see first, what are your goals with social media? Is it going to become your main source of lead generation? And then which platforms do you want to focus on? And most importantly, what is your bandwidth for social? Like, do you have an hour a day or do you have 5 hours a day? And it's better to do a great job on one channel than you do a crappy job and be on several channels. You rather have a great YouTube channel or a great Twitter account than have a semi-used LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram account, right? So choose one and focus on one. If you have the bandwidth to do 2, then expand to 2, but do a great job. Spend a lot of time because you need to make sure you're creating great content. You need to have visual content, videos ideally. You need to post multiple times a day. You need to engage with people. You need to analyze data. It's a ton of effort to support one social media channel. So just really pay attention to where you should be. And if you only can do one, it's better to do one, but do it right. The other thing that I wanted to say about both content or SEO or blogs and social is, especially in the beginning of your company, it is okay to give it a boost with ads. Now, the best way I've seen of doing ads is you're trying to use dollars to give more exposure to your useful content that you're creating. So it's not like an ad to, hey, come here and buy HubSpot. It's more like ads behind, hey, here's a new webinar for sales strategies for 2021. Sign up here. So the best use I've seen for ads is to try to get more visibility to good, engaging content that can help you convert leads, more so than something more transactional. And when you are measuring those ads, try to do it. And of course, I'm biased because HubSpot does this, but even if it's not HubSpot, try to connect your ads to your CRM or to whatever you use for sales. Because when you're tracking the ROI or the effectiveness of your ad strategy, you don't want to measure how many people are, how many impressions, how many clicks, or how many leads you're generating. What you actually want to see is how many dollars in sales you're generating from those ads. And the best way to do that is if you're connecting your ad platform to your CRM, where you can say, well, like I invested $170 on ads, but I generated $160 or $180 in sales from 2 customers who each spent $60 or 56. It's a much better way to do this. And I'll tell you why. If I show you the table of the social media spend on most companies, but if you ranked it by leads generated, for almost all of them, Facebook will be number 1 because it just has more volume. But if I show you a B2B company and Facebook would still be first, more than half of them, way more than half of them, if you rank it by number of customers generated, then LinkedIn jumps to 1. Almost always. It's almost like doesn't fail. If you're organized by number of customers, then LinkedIn goes to 1. And so what that means is Facebook has a ton of reach, but the conversion rates and the close rates on leads generated on Facebook are much smaller than the conversion and close rates for leads generated on LinkedIn. And so when you're thinking about the cost of acquisition, you have to balance these 2 things out, because LinkedIn, it is more expensive, but if you're closing at a higher rate and the cost of sales for your company, let's say you have a team of engineers selling, that's an expensive sales team, you want to probably have a higher conversion rate of leads source for your lead generation. So you might choose, in that case, you might choose LinkedIn instead of Facebook, even though Facebook generates way more leads than LinkedIn. So it's very good to always tie your ads to your CRM. Now that's the attracting part. Now the engaging part, and this is a little faster, so we're gonna be okay on time. How do you engage people when they get to your website? First thing is the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit out there is your chatbot. Like someone's on your website. They may be on your website at any point of the day, any point of the week. You want to have some sort of interaction element there. And you can't always be there behind a live chat. So one of the best resources out there right now is a chatbot. Chatbot is a very democratized technology. Like HubSpot has it for free. If you create a free account, you can get a chatbot for free. There's great tools out there. There's a Boston company named I forgot their name, but they're a great company. Their whole business is a chatbot, and how that chatbot is optimized for interacting and maximizing the conversion of your traffic. And HubSpot, we have done our own. Drift is a company. We have done our own experimentation, and we found that chatbots actually convert leads 3 times more than a live chat, because people like to interact with bots more than with people. Our reasoning is people think that if a person is on the live chat, they're going to try to sell them something, whereas a robot is not. And so chatbot is a huge tactic to use on your website. There's no reason to not have one. There are free tools out there. Even if it's just like, hey, thank you for coming here. Can I get your email so we can get in touch with you? As easy as that, and now you're generating a lead. So there's no excuse to not do chatbots. The other thing is having what we call lead magnets. What we mean by that is having elements where you can exchange something for something. You can give your visitor something of value, and you can get something of value in return. And that is a golden rule, right? Like you have to give something of value. We have someone coming in. That's a bit late though. I don't know if they missed the time. The main element of generating leads on your website with content, with these lead magnets, is you have to give something of value to get something of value in return. So what does this look like? Well, like on a more common way, you can have, a use case or a case study or a success case of one of your customers. And you can have that with a video or a text that people can download. You could have tools like a calculator. This is very common in the finance industry, where you have the mortgage rate calculator. Now, you probably all seen that when you're using that, at one point you're giving some some sort of information, either an email or a phone or something. So these are all tools that provide a ton of value to your customer, but what you do is you ask for information in return. The main piece of information that you could ask for in a digital world is, of course, the email of someone. Now, for someone to give you an email, you have to add a ton of value. And you probably had this experience before, right? Where you were going to download something that you found interesting and they asked you for your email and you're like, no, I'm not sure. That's not worth my email. In some other instances, you found like the consumer reports for the best SUVs in 2020. All right, I'll give you my email. I want to know what the top 10 are, right? So there are some pieces of content that are so valuable that I will give you my email, or I will give you even more than my email if it's valuable enough. And so like HubSpot does this a ton. If you want to see what that looks like, go to our website, go to our blog. It's very hard to find a blog post that doesn't have some sort of transaction like that at some point or at the bottom, where you say, hey, here's our inbound marketing course or certification, or there's this webinar, or there's this additional piece of content or study or playbook or whatever, and we'll ask you for your email, right? That's a conversion right there. And so there are many types of lead magnets. I'll give you here some information. There's a link there to also more resources on how to think about this. But basically, main thing is think about the golden rule. You give something of value, you get something of value back. If I give you an infographic on X and you ask me about my email, I may give you that. But if you ask me about my telephone and my address, I'm not going to give you that just for an infographic. I may give you that if you're going to give me a credit score for my business, right? So very different value, an infographic versus my credit score. So I can give more information in return. Finally, the information you're getting is email. So how do you address email? And we have 5 more minutes. So we're going to go through this and it's going to be great. First thing is, most people think of email as an antiquated thing and something that is less effective today than it was 5 years ago, which is true, but that's very far from saying that it's dead. Email still is way more effective than social and other channels of lead generation combined. Right? If you take Facebook and Twitter combined, and for most companies, like in general, for most companies, if you say how many leads these channels generated in this month or in this quarter, and how many leads were generated by email, email is going to be 10x. Right? Email is still a very powerful tool to generate leads and to generate sales if you're like in an e-commerce environment. So email is very valuable, but you have to do it right. So I have 3 tips for doing email marketing. If you want to learn more about good email marketing campaigns, how to write great copy, there's a ton of information out there. There's a ton of information about email strategy on the HubSpot blog. But there's 3 things that I want to kind of highlight. One is how to be effective with email is you have to send the right message to the right person at the right time, right? And if you think of the right message, that's copy. And how do you do great copy? Like a good title, a good subject line, a very actionable and clear message in the body of the email, and a very clear call to action. Then you need to send this to the right person, right? You can't send the same email to your entire database. So how are you segmenting your database so that your message is as relevant as possible for that person? And think about the buyer's journey, right? An email for someone in the awareness stage, very different than an email for someone in their decision stage. And we're going to see that in the next slide. And then the right time, right? What is the right time to send an email? We gave the example before of if you abandon your cart on a website and I get that email a week later or a day later or 2 hours later saying, hey, it looks like, can you come back and complete your transaction? Like if you do this in Casper, for example, you get an email 3 hours later saying, hey, by the way, come back to bed, right? They're very funny about it and complete your transaction. Uni Pizza, right? These pizza ovens, high-end pizza ovens, same thing. If you abandon cart, they'll send you an email. If you don't respond the email, right? They'll send you an email 3 days later saying, hey, by the way, shipment is on us. Make sure you complete your transaction. So right message to the right person at the right time is the biggest rule for being effective with marketing. Now, what do you measure for optimization? You want to measure deliverability, right? If I send 100 emails, how many of those 100 get to the 100 people? Am I getting 98 out of the 100 to the destination? Am I getting 99? Am I getting 80? Right? Deliverability is a huge issue. The higher deliverability you have, the more reputation you have, the less you're going to go into spam. So that's a huge thing to do. The next thing is opens and clicks. Are people opening your email? That's a huge one. And then are people clicking on the call to action on the email? So these three things, if you start measuring these three things and compare campaigns, compare copy, compare segments of your database and see what's working with what, you're going to be a leg up on being effective with email marketing. And the next thing is, especially when you think about optimizing and then delivering the right person, the right message to the right person at the right time, it's easy when it's a small database, but as you start growing, as you start doing more of these email marketing campaigns, it becomes really hard to do it manually. So this is where automation comes in. If you've heard about marketing automation or email automation, the whole concept of email automation is, can I set a rules in a system where it executes campaigns to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time without me having to do it manually every single time? So what this will look on the front end, right, on the receiving end is, if I'm a prospect on the database and I'm in the, say, consideration stage, I'm marked as someone in the consideration stage who has been reading my blog post, I'll send this email and download your SEO template because you've been reading about SEO, so you're in that bucket. Second is, well, you read about that. I'll send you a second email about social media, right? I'm going to kind of try to move in that buyer's journey. And eventually, if you keep opening and clicking on those emails, then I'm going to send you a third email, a decision stage email, which is, hey, you've been reading a lot about email marketing and SEO and social media. Do you want us to help you evaluate your marketing strategy? You want to engage with our team, right? Now, it's a sequence of events that happen automatically. Doing this manually requires a ton of work. Automation is where you, behind the curtains, can set up the rules for these emails to be sent automatically based on what's going on. Who are you in my database? Like HubSpot has stuff like, you're a high quality lead because you've read over 5 blog posts and you came to our pricing page. It kicks off what we call a workflow when you receive these very specific emails, right? The right content to the right person at the right time. So again, just as a summary, I know we're out of time. Real quick, 6 strategies we saw today. 3 for attracting, 3 for engaging. For attracting, SEO, thinking of topic clusters and not keywords. Using blogging as a scalable, lower cost way of scaling your lead generation, and use social media and ads to potentiate your reach with your market. And then once you get people to your website, using chatbots, using lead magnets to convert leads to get their information, and then using email marketing and automation to keep engaging with them and moving them from, knowing you to wanting to buy from you. So hopefully that helped a little bit to get going. Again, here's your marketing strategy step by step, buyer persona, buyer's journey. Decide if you're going to focus on attract, engage, and delight, and then which place are you going to focus on? Are you going to do the 6 of them that we discussed today? Or are you going to focus on one? Are you going to focus only on SEO? And that is it.
Awesome. That was great. Very, very helpful information, Jose. We definitely appreciate it. Did anyone want to drop any questions? I know that we've got to go ahead and hop off here. We're at the end of our time. But does anyone have any quick last minute questions, Jose, if you have a minute or two for that?
Yeah, I can stay a few minutes over. Sorry, we ran over. It's a newer slide deck, so it's a little longer than I anticipated. But yeah, I can stay here for the next 10 minutes if you guys have questions.
Okay, great. So there's no formal way of really queuing this. If anyone has any questions, just unmute and ask, or drop something in the chat, and we'll go from there.
There's actually a great question from Frank on your hosting your own blog versus blogging on place. So interesting enough, because I was seeing this slide that was pretty long already. I had a slide about data specifically that I removed. And it is a good strategy to use what we call authoritative blogs like Medium and LinkedIn. And these are actually the two that we mentioned, Medium and LinkedIn, to post your content. Now, long term, you want to have your own blog with its own authority, because that's going to be linked to your website and just going to add to your SEO and getting found. But in terms of building authority with your target market and using Medium and LinkedIn, which makes it easier for your content to get in front of people versus your own blog where no one's going to type your blog. People are going to go to Medium, but not your blog. So in terms of getting content in front of people, great thing to do. LinkedIn, Medium, even answering questions on Quora is a good thing to do, or posting or engaging in conversations in like subreddit, right? Those are other two channels to explore. In terms of building SEO authority for your website so that you can start generating organic traffic and organic lead generation, you want to start actually building a blog as well. Great question, Frank.
Any other questions anyone want to hop in the chat or unmute and ask before we head out?
What's a good way to find your, what did you call it? The buyer persona?
A good way to find your buyer persona.
Right.
Good. So it depends on where you're at, right? Like if you're starting out, then you're going to make a wild guess, not a wild guess, an educated guess on like who do you think is going to value your product or service the most based on the problem it's solving. But at the very early stage, that's where I would do like the customer interviews and kind of see what resonates more. That's kind of, you're trying to still figure out what's your product market fit. That's early on. Later on, like if we think of like going back to the history of HubSpot, like why do we decide mid-market versus enterprise or small business? Not that we weren't selling to those, but when we invested in marketing and growing, we invested in mid-market. We were selling to a wider group of people that we thought were a good fit based on our initial customer interviews, and this is 15 years ago, right? But when we started selling and we started seeing traction, there were two things that we were measuring to decide who's the best customer for us. One is what's easier to acquire, the lower cost of acquisition, who's getting more traction. And that is not sufficient. That's something we learned later on. You need to measure that. The second thing we start measuring is who stays with us the longest. Now, you may need some time to go by to realize what that is. That's something that happened with HubSpot that we learned the hard way. We're getting a ton of customers, but then we weren't measuring who was staying with us. One thing you can do for that is something that is done pretty regularly in the SaaS industry. You do cohorts. And so you say, well, like, how many customers did I sign in January, February, March? And then you take the January customers. And what you measure is who gets to the actions that correlate with retention. And you have to define that. So for Dropbox, it's one file in one folder. So what Dropbox was measuring is who can have one file in one folder by 1 week. Slack was this many amounts of users and this many amount of messages exchanged in a certain amount of time. For HubSpot was 5 of our apps used within the first 60 days. And we started measuring, okay, because those actions relate to high retention, right? So if we got a customer to use 5 apps, and this is back in the day, right? Like we have made many more apps today, but back in the day, 5 apps by 60 days, how many customers are we getting there? And so we would take the cohorts. 60% of our cohort is getting to 5 apps within 60 days. Then in February, 60, then 70, then 80. Now we know we have product market fit. So that is a good buyer persona to keep pursuing. So if you separate the personas and you start measuring those cohorts, you start getting a good sense of who's easier to acquire and who's going to stay with you the longest. Yes, Aaron, data is everything. It's hard when you're starting out because you don't have a ton. So you have to make a ton of educated guesses. But if you know what to measure and you start building that data, within a year, you start seeing very interesting stuff that is very helpful for you to know where to focus your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Any final ones before we hop off here, guys? Okay, well, I believe that's it. Jose, again, we are very appreciative of your time this evening. This was a great session. I feel like everyone learned a lot, and we're looking forward to being able to sit down with you, hopefully at the beginning of the year again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for staying here. I know it was a extensive slide deck to go through. I might need to make some adjustments to make it a little bit more condensed, but thank you for staying here. If you have more questions after the fact, I love startups. I love to help. Look for me on LinkedIn. Jose Martins HubSpot. I'm the only one. Feel free to connect, send me a message. I'm happy to help.
All right. Thank you, Jose. Well, everyone, thank you for coming this evening, and we're going to go ahead and hop off here. Everyone, have a good one. Thank you.
Bye, all.
Thank you.